How's it going? In response to my IRI togging trip, I got a couple of questions about some of the rigs that I used and why I used them, or even what the differences are between the rigs that I use on my kayak and on my and from the jetty or from the shore. So it's probably a repeat of what a lot of people know, but for those that had the question or that might have never even tried talking, just to even think about it, or you might be on family vacation in Delaware, Rehoboth, and you might just have some opportune time to just try it out. Um, I just wanted to throw out this basic tutorial, if you would call it that, of what rigs to use and why they're beneficial. So I hope this helps some of you guys. For those of you that might know better than me, maybe you could throw some tips my way and some other methods you guys might have to make me a better fisherman as well. So either way, this is gonna be just a short tutorial I have for you guys. So hope it helps you guys out. So I'm gonna start with the rigs that we use on the kayak, and just a simple disclaimer: if you're not getting stuck, you're in the wrong spot. So you need to be getting stuck to a certain degree. So with that being said, you also got to realize that since they are going to get stuck, um, you have to maximize the possibilities of getting a fish out when you hook them. From the kayak, you're fishing vertical, so the weight is usually going to be on the bottom, and this is the rig that I use. So pretty much I'll take the line, I'll usually have about like 4 or 5 foot lengths of mono that I pre-make for the kayak, because I don't want to be making these online or on the kayak. So what I do is on the very bottom, usually what I'll have is just a double overhand. I'll just do a single with this twine because it's pretty thick and I don't think I'll be able to get the sinker through. So I just do a double overhand. So I do this once, and then I'll do it one more time, but for the sake of this making this work, I'll just do it one time for now. And also, I mean, it's not the most critical thing to make this not that secure, because like I said, a lot of times you want a breakaway point of a certain extent, so sometimes I'll just do a single and just make that my breakaway, but I'll show you what I mean by the breakaway soon. So, and then it depends. Sometimes if the rocks that I fish in are going to be large boulders, sometimes I make it a little bit longer. If it's tight little holes, then sometimes I make it a little bit shorter. But anywhere from, I would say, 6 to a foot above this loop, I would make a dropper loop. All right. Try my best to just kind of show how this is done, but pretty much you're going to overlap the line like this. I just take one loop and just follow that loop and just keep going over and under. And I do that about 4 times or 5 times, but the more you do, it's probably gonna be a little trickier. So I do it about 4 or 5 times usually, and all you're doing is that little gap that you have that you just made by twisting it, you want to keep it open at all times. And then the top part of that loop, you want to push it through that hole like this. And the most critical part about this is you want to try to keep this line, the sides as twisted as straight as possible, because if it starts pulling in like this, the knot's going to get all messed in, and the mono tends to be a lot more stingier. So you want to keep that flat. And usually I'll hold this part with my teeth, but for the sake of demo, I'll try to hold it like this, because yeah. But I'll hold this part with my teeth, and then I'll just start pulling it. I'll just start pulling it tight like this. It's getting messed up, but yeah, you get the idea. You're just gonna keep pulling it tight until you get it in tight like this. And obviously, if you hold this part with your teeth, this loop will eventually just stay a little bigger by the time the knot's done. But like I said, for demo's sake, I'm trying to keep this on the screen. You're just gonna pull it tight like that. Like that, pretty much. Okay? So that's the dropper loop. And the reason why we use a dropper loop as opposed to just, you know, taking it and just tying another knot like what we did on the bottom, like this, is that when the line holds down taut, you see how that this loop here stays out perpendicular to the line, and that's really critical in how you're going to get the hook set down, because the line's not going down like this along the line or getting wrapped around. It will stay out like this, and I'll show you in a second what that looks like with the hook. And for this, I actually like to use the Mustad 3.0 most often. 3/0 O'Shaughnessy short shank hook. Some people like the long shank, but I don't know, I want to make, for me, I like to make sure that the hook's going to get in the fish's mouth, because usually from the shore it is a lot smaller usually than what you would catch on a boat or something. So I like to do the 3/0 O'Shaughnessy short shank Mustad hooks, and they're the Mustad hooks. That's what I usually like to use. But for this is all I have right now, so I'm using the Gamakatsu Gamakatsu octopus hooks 3/0. So pretty much, if you pull it tight, what it will look like is this here, and it's the twine, so it's actually just very limp, so it's actually sinking down. But when you have it with mono, this part will stand. And one thing that you always want to check is that you want to make sure that you have it looped into your hook the right way. What I mean by that is, if you have it looped in and the hook is facing down like this, that is not what you want. You want to make sure that when you loop it through this thing, that you have it in the right direction, so that the hook is standing up like this. Alright, and I mean, it varies. I'm not going to say go in through the back, go in the front, or whatever, but just you want to have it end up like this when you have the hook in, essentially. Alright, and on the bottom, all you're simply doing is, with that loop that you created originally, just have it ready to go, and you slide the weight on, and that is pretty much the kayak rig. And yeah, that's what I like to do. Well, that's what we usually do. And some people will actually recommend, going back to the point where I said breakaway point, what some people like to do, I don't necessarily do it, but some people like to do this. Anytime there's a knot in your line anywhere here, like along the line, that creates a kink in the line, and that's a weak point essentially, and it breaks away easier at that point usually. So a lot of times what some people will do is actually they'll add one overhand knot just in a random spot close to the sinker, like this, and it's just nothing special, just overhand knot, and you'll see the knot like right there. So what that does is it creates a weak point right here. So if you have a fish and you're coming out and this weight gets stuck between the rocks, and the fish is actually on right here, and you feel it moving around, a lot of times what you can do is you'll start just gently tugging at it and just kind of just popping it, and what ends up happening is that at that weak point, the line will tend to snap. They'll tend to just kink up and just actually break off right there. So that's what some people like to do, just because they want to make sure that they want to give them the best possibility to get that fish out. So So fishing from the shore, from the jetties. The reason why I'm showing you this now, even though I'm doing something a little different, is that I just wanted to get to the point where a lot of times when I go kayak fishing, sometimes it's just too windy for me to get out in the water. So I'll actually just end up hopping over to the inlet and just fishing for shore. But all I do is sometimes I just don't want to retie rigs, or I don't have any of the rigs ready that I would normally have if I am fishing from shore. So all I do is actually just this bank sinker would actually go on over here through this dropper loop, and I'll just put this hook on the bottom here, so it pretty much it switches places. And the reason for that is from the shore, when you're, like I said previous, you want to give your best out of getting the line out without getting a snag. But a lot of times if you have the hook on top and the weight down here, what ends up happening is that this weight's holding it down, and you're pulling it from shore. So when you're coming down, the line's sinking like this. So if you're trying to get over any kind of structure, pretty much this weight's holding it down. So you're actually pretty much causing the hook to be pretty much pressed up against a rock and come over, and eventually get snagged. So having the weight on the top, what difference that makes, I'll just do it like this. What difference that makes is that this is lighter. So when you're pulling your weight over the rock, what ends up happening is, since the tension's over here, you're actually having control of the weight without anything that's going to get stuck up here. So a lot of times the weight would be down, but it'll bump over, and since the bait hook is lighter, it'll pretty much follow suit and get out. So that's just the general idea of it. So a lot of times when people fish from shore, they rather have the weight up higher and the hook lower, so that they could actually maximize it. And the other theory or idea behind that is that, especially when you're fishing for shore, they want to kind of cast it out a little bit beyond the rocks, and pull it through and just find the holes. And essentially what that's going to do is, when they find the holes, this line is actually going to be swaying in the current between the rocks, obviously. So if you find that hole, this line will actually just sink and just kind of find the holes a little bit, and pretty much have the fish bite it. So now the only downfall of this is that it's pretty obvious. Sometimes these fish are not going to bite and run like a striper would, or a flounder would, or anything else, or actually not even a flounder, like a bluefish or something like that. It's not going to bite and run because they're just sitting inside of holes. So sometimes what ends up happening is that they'll just be sitting there eating it and not really pulling it. So a lot of times you'll just have your bait lost and not even feel the bite. So there's this other rig that kind of gives you the ability to feel it, feel the bite. So I'm gonna just move on to that and just kind of show you from that rig. So give me 1 second. So for the shore, what I like to do is actually use these gamakatsu hooks, and a lot of times what I will be doing is pretty much pre-tying these gamakatsu hooks snell. That's why I actually get the circle hooks. I'll tie the snell knot on these guys. I'll tie the snell knot on these guys and use it that way. I'll just tie about 1 foot lengths of leader. I don't like using swivels. I don't like using anything else really. Just because, like I said, you're going to be losing things, so I don't want to put more stuff on that I'm going to be losing. So a lot of times I'll just tie the snell knot, leave about a 1 foot length of leader, and that's pretty much it for the bottom portion of it. So going on, so right here I'll just tie just a regular knot just for time's sake. But like I said, snell knot around the hook. I'll just tie it like this just for now. So with the leader made, I have that set aside. So when I get out to the fishing hole, what I'll usually do is I'll have my main line coming down. So once again, everyone has their own preferences, but I'm trying to get my line as out into the water as fast as possible without losing all this extra gear. So all I'm doing is I'll be on my main line coming down. I'll have a 3 ounce egg sinker. I don't like going heavier too often, just because it's just sometimes I feel like it just gets jammed up in rocks better. But sometimes there is a reason that people use heavier. But me personally, I don't go really any lighter or heavier than a 3 ounce. So egg sinker goes onto the main line, and this is more kind of a preference again. But a lot of times, some people like to throw a bead on here, just to protect the knot where you're knotting it. But if I have it, great, and it'll actually prevent this egg sinker from getting passed down to the hook. But other times, I'm just too rushed, and I don't want to be wasting time fiddling with it, all this other stuff. So a lot of times, what I do is I'll just actually take the bottom line here, and I'll just do about 3 or 4 just to make it the knot not pretty thick. So once, twice, 3 times, and I'll just pull that tight right there. And that's what I usually do, just to make it very simple. And that egg sinker should stop there. So this is gonna be the rig that I most often use, and a lot of other people use as well. And the reason why a lot of people like this is that when they cast it out, it'll be cast out. I mean, is that essentially like what I showed you with the bank sinkers? Now, the reason why people like this rig here is that since the egg sinker is not hanging down low like the bank sinker would off the line on a dropper loop or any other kind of loop, it actually is pulling along in line with the fishing line. So when you're reeling it in, it's actually just leaving that little bottom part to really kind of sink. So a lot of times they'll kind of bump over the rocks and get over it a lot easier because you have control of it with the rod tip. It leaves a lot less to get snagged. So that's why people like to use this egg sinker, on top of the reason being that it slides and you could actually see the bites a lot better. So that's kind of why people like to use this rigs from the Jetty as well. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, those are the types of rigs that we use. Variations, 3 different ways. So I mean, of course everyone might do things a little differently, but like I said, I'm losing stuff regardless. So I'm trying to just keep things simple, strong enough to pull the fish out, but then not strong enough so that, I'm just like being stuck and not being able to get the fish out. So I try to minimize any terminal tackle that I have, because I'm like I said, I'm losing it, so I don't want to lose it. So this is just what I run with, and it's worked fine for me. The knots don't give out, so it's just I feel like it's the ideal setup, without losing a lot of money or time. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to shoot me some comments below, and I'll try to help you guys out as much as possible. I mean, I'm not any pro by any means, but just like anybody else, I'm just out there to try to catch that next big one or the next meal or whatever it might be. But without your lines being in the water, you're losing fishing time. So like I said, simplicity is key, and this is what I found best fits that description. So yeah, so just let me know if you guys have any questions. Thank you.